In this video, you'll see the initial infrastructure we put in place before moving onto our 30 raw acres in Middle Tennessee, and I'll go over all the costs. When we bought 30 acres in Tennessee, we were still living in Puerto Rico, with about 6 months left on our apartment lease. That meant we had 6 months to get the property into a condition where we could move onto it: electricity, water, septic, internet, and an RV to live in. The land itself cost $135,000, which works out to about $4,500 per acre. I think that's a pretty good deal, and I think we got it because it's hilly, wooded, and divided by a stream. For us, that's all a plus, but for developers or farmers, it wouldn't work. While still living in Puerto Rico, we hired a company to put in our septic tank in Tennessee, which they did for an amazing price. It was only $4,800. I've had people online literally tell me I must be lying about that price because it's so low, but it is legit. There were also a couple $100s in permitting costs to get the state environmental guys out there to do the perk test to make sure the septic field drains at the right rate. About 2 months before the big move, we stayed in the area for 2 weeks and managed to buy an RV, which cost $15,000. This is where we'll be living while we build. The good news is it's right on site, so that should help the build go a lot quicker. It's pretty cramped though. Let me know in the comments if you would live in something this small for about a year. We also met with the electrical company to figure out our options for bringing electricity onto the property. The electric company's engineer was extremely helpful, and we planned out a low-cost option to bring electricity back 600 feet from the road. I really hate wires, so I really wanted the underground electricity. I compromised for cost to bring it above ground with wires and poles the first 400 feet or so, and then the next 200 feet to the build site is underground, going underground to the transformer here, and then underground the rest of the way to the house as well. We also buried our 100-foot RV extension cord from the temporary pole where they also put in the transformer. The pole was free, and we just had to pay for the trenching, transformer pad, and cover, around $2,500. That's a great price because I thought it was going to cost a solid $10,000 to bring electricity that far. Later, it will cost another $5,000 or so for trenching and the hookup to the actual house. But in order to move onto the property, this was a cheaper, quicker setup and less maintenance compared to solar panels and batteries, which is why we decided to add all that later as a backup instead of starting off-grid. We also hired a company to bring water from the road, which cost about $3.50 per foot, or $2,100 total. We managed to get all the hookups finished just days before we moved onto the property, and internet was set up about a week later. Fiber optic internet was only a $75 connection fee, and that's the same thing they charge whether you're hooking up an apartment or they had to bring it in 600 feet from the road. They basically use this giant sewing machine to sew the wire into the ground and then put it into this box, which runs into the trailer right there. But they did say it's going to cost us another $75 to move it to the house, so, you know. The other major infrastructure we opted for was a shipping container for storage. This was especially important because we were shipping in some of our stuff from our apartment in Puerto Rico and had nowhere to put it with only an RV on the property. The point of getting the shipping container was to make it a shed/kitchenette, pretty messy right now, but altogether this was $3,350 including shipping. And it's new. It's a one trip. Technically, they're all going to be one trip because they're not going to ship them empty. But that's as close as you can get to making sure it hasn't been marinating in deadly chemicals for several years. So day one, moving onto the property, we had spent a grand total of $28,025 in addition to the land and not counting the smaller costs like the 100-foot extension cords and stuff like that. That might sound like a lot, but when you divide it over just 1 year, it's like paying $2,350 a month for rent. My dad, my uncle, and my dad's friend were all coming down about 1 month after we moved onto the property to help with the framing of the house, which is why we spent some time setting up an outdoor shower and composting toilet. I'll link to the video of that build in the description. And so that we could hit the ground running when they arrived, we opted to have the slab foundation put in by a professional. That's the next video where I'll cover the foundation, the slab foundation pour, and I'll briefly go over the passive solar design where we'll use the sun and that slab to be a little bit more efficient and keep it warmer in the winter and cooler in the summer. Definitely subscribe if you don't want to miss that, and please give this video a like, the thumbs up, much appreciated.